I made notes on how we did it. Those notes might not... Hi!
Hello!
Welcome to the Z Space 9 podcast.
Podcast where we talk about Animorphs, a 90s kids book series about war and intergalactic politics,
and Deep Space Nine, a 90s television show about war and intergalactic politics.
And people who turn into animals.
Which are both extremely fun pieces of media that we are experiencing either again or for the first or semi-first time.
That went better!
Yay! Yeah, we're slowly learning how to do the intro, and it's going beautifully.
What did we watch? Again, I'm gonna have to find a better word than consume.
What did we experience?
Yes, what did we experience for this week?
For this week, we experienced Animorphs Book 2, The Visitor, and we experienced Deep Space Nine episodes 3 to 6, because last week's episode, the pilot, was technically episodes 1 and 2. It's a double-parter, which are Past Prologue, A Man Alone, Babel, and Captive Pursuit.
If for some reason you are following along on our very chaotic schedule, which I don't think you are, but if you are, that might be episodes 2 through 5 for
yes.
You guys, because I didn't break up Emissary. So don't panic.
You have not missed anything. The first season of Deep Space Nine is just a little bit weird numbers-wise. But yeah, so we experienced both of those this week.
And now we're going to summarize it with our very handily written summaries we learned from last time.
We made a pact to handily prepare followable summaries of this one book and 4 episodes. So I will ask you, what happened in Animorphs Book 2, The Visitor?
Animorphs Book 2, The Visitor. Rachel is our narrator this time. So we rotated from Jake. And she gives us the rundown on the characters and the series premise as we go through the cold open. The kids flying as birds, plus more thermals. There will be more thermals.
I'm liking the trend of thermals.
They get shot at by bird poachers and have to take them down by stealing the gun and beer out of their hands. This is a thing that happens. I couldn't fit this in, but Cassie also has a watch on the ground next to their clothes that they look at to make sure that they don't go overtime on the morphs, and does such a ridiculous closer to that open. It's ridiculous and I love it, which was actually written in the summary. Mm-hmm. They walk home through the construction site, and it brings back sobering memories. They decide they have to do something, even though the last time they tried, they definitively got their asses kicked. But their way in is Rachel's old friend, Melissa Chapman, who is the daughter of the Yeerk-controlled assistant principal Chapman. Rachel doesn't make a lot of headway, since she and Melissa have drifted apart, and also Melissa has been acting distant and strange lately. So the Animorphs decide Rachel will have to do this by sneaking in, morphed as Melissa's cat, Fluffer McKitty. That name. I love it. A convoluted plan ensues where Rachel morphs a shrew to lure Fluffer out. It's a bad plan, and it's very bad for Rachel. But they do eventually manage to get the cat morph. Rachel sneaks in. More psychological horror ensues as we see what a household full of controllers looks like. Rachel sneaks into Chapman's Star Trek room and eavesdrops on a conversation with Mr. 3, who threatens the Yeerk in Chapman's head by turning into this weird Yeerk-eating creature in his hologram. Apparently, Mr. 3 isn't a very lovable manager, although he does appear to love cats.
It's so true.
And even in the end, he's like, the other Andalite morphed something similar to the cat, but bigger. And they were like, It's a tiger, Visser.
This book series is actually about Visser 3 learning that he is a cat person.
True. Rachel pushes her luck to stay and comfort Melissa, but she does get out in time. After a few days, she goes in again. This time, Chapman and the Visser catch her and are definitely onto her, and they take her out to kill her. The execution stalls when Visser 3 threatens to yerk Melissa, and Chapman, who has had moments of horrific, eerie rebellion throughout, speaks directly to the Visser and promises to keep fighting if he ever threatens his daughter again. The other Animorphs crash the party. It turns out Jake had a contingency for Rachel getting caught being reckless, and it was stow away on Rachel's back as a flea, and I guess call the others in and make sure they come. They escape the Yerks, destroy a bug fighter, and live to fight another day, which is a very fast summary of, extended action sequence at the end of the book.
There's a lot going on there.
Yeah. Oh, and somewhere in the middle there, Rachel morphs half an elephant to scare away a creepy guy. And everybody yells at her about it, and it's kind of victim blaming.
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
And that is Animorphs Book 2. And now Emma has to summarize 4 episodes of Star Trek
Let's go! First of all, that was an excellent summary in breaking down the Animorphs. Really, I stand by my statement from last week of so many things happen back to back.
I know.
At such a rapid pace.
I mean, you said that about the first book, and I was like, yeah, because it's the first book, and then this book happened, and I was like, actually, no, it's all the books.
A lot of shit happens really fast. It's great. All right, on the topic of many things happening. So, Deep Space Nine, we had 4 episodes in a row. I'm going to do these episode by episode in a slightly... I will perhaps skim over some highly specific details, and if I do, we can return to them later, as I went back to summarize to make sure that I had especially guest character names right, and was covering all the major A-plot and B-plot plot points. Because Star Trek loves its A-plots and its B-plots, and then its C and D-plots.
Did Bashir ever solve his cube?
That is perhaps the greatest cliffhanger we will ever be left on. It's very important. Will Bashir solve the cube? It's a metaphor. All right, so past prologue. First episode post the pilot. This episode, I would argue, focuses primarily on Major Kira, who is the Bajoran liaison to the station and is essentially the second in command to Cisco. An old friend and fighter who was in league with Kira, named Tana, comes to Deep Space Nine seeking political asylum. He was formerly part of a Bajoran terrorist cell, which seems to potentially have been disbanded, or is at least not at its full strength, but association with it is still not great, but he is there, but not great politically. He is there seeking asylum on Deep Space Nine, swears that he has no further connection to his old way of life. So she and the rest of the station start interfacing with him. Meanwhile, in the background, which will become relevant about 30 minutes later into the episode, Bashir, in the cold open, meets Garrick, who is a Cardassian tailor who is remaining on the station. One of the few members of Cardassia who still seems to be on the station. He claims that he is just a tailor and there to just hang out and people watch, and says it all in a way that does not seem trustworthy in the slightest. Bashir is immediately entranced by him and is like, this guy's definitely a spy, and we get the sense that Bashir has a perhaps deeply romanticized view of that and wants to immediately learn more about him and spread these rumors.
He immediately thinks that Garrick might be a spy, but also can't understand when Garrick gives him the most obvious clue.
Yeah, it's great. It's beautiful. This then parlays its way into Garrick enlisting Bashir and the rest of command into sort of tipping them off that Tana, Kira's friend, is actually on the station acquiring some dangerous energy components from a pair of Klingons who are selling them to him through a deal. Tana is also trying to get Kira to be enlisted in this deal. She is unsure about doing it. She does not want to return to to her former ways of fighting, or at least says that she does not. Tana pushes back on her a lot. There's a lot of character study going on in this episode. But she eventually agrees to go along with him on this rendezvous to get these energy components. It becomes clear that they are getting these energy components because Tana wishes to blow up the wormhole that they just moved the station to, a wormhole to the Gamma Quadrant. He asks for her aid. She ends up turning against him and disarming him so that he can't let off the bomb and destroy the wormhole, and convinces him to essentially surrender himself to Starfleet Command rather than Bajor or the Cardassians, while he reprimands her for having essentially turned her back on her former way of fighting for Bajor, and tells her that she's, sold out to basically become a political liaison, and she has to reckon with who she was and who she wishes to be and where the intersection are. And Bashir gets his spy moment. Episode 4, A Man Alone. Last episode focused on Kira. This episode focuses more on Odo, who is the former and current head of security, essentially, on the station. Also has the ability to shapeshift a theme across media theme. He can turn into different objects and items, often uses this in pursuit of catching people in the midst of different acts or following people who might be going to commit something. This has not been fully looked into as of yet in the series. There is a mention in the pilot episode, a one-off mention in dialogue where he's talking to Kira and mentions having been found somewhere in the Gamma Quadrant when he was younger. In this episode, an old enemy of Odo's, Ibudan, turns up on the station at Quark's bar. Odo is very unhappy to see Ibudan, who apparently was a smuggler during the war, helped Bajor in some ways, but also seemed to be much more motivated by profit than by actual desire to help, and was willing to let people get hurt or killed. Ibudan, however, gets murdered in a holosuite a little while later. Heavy quote, murdered, air quotes, murdered. Turns up dead, so it would seem. Very classic Clue, knife in the back. You get a great dramatic shot of someone stabbing him in the back. It's beautiful. In a holosuite, which is basically a recreational room with projections. So Odo starts trying to solve this murder mystery. It becomes a great locked room mystery of the only DNA in there that's trackable is Ibudan's. Nobody seems to have come in or out. And increasingly, the greatest suspect for the murder seems to be Odo himself. And the people of the station start to, the Bajorans on the station start to turn against him and end up in a wonderful mob outside of his office demanding that he face consequences for murdering Ibudan. Meanwhile, Bashir and Sisko and Dax are all working on trying to solve this mystery. They realize that Ibudan has essentially made a clone of himself, which he then killed in order to try and frame Odo for his own death. I love science fiction murder mysteries. They're great. Odo is cleared and finds Ibudan as he's about to leave the ship, but is still trying to kind of recover from his aloneness and the way that much of the rest of the station, if not his immediate friends in command, were willing to sort of turn on him and become suspicious of him and the ramifications of that. Meanwhile, in the background, there's a lot of B-plots in this one. Sisko is kind of coming to terms with getting to know the new Dax, as opposed to his old mentor, Curzon Dax, who was very different from current, younger female Jadzia Dax. Bashir is trying desperately to flirt with Dax, and Dax is trying desperately to gently impart to him that the concept of this relationship is, at a bare minimum, not what he most certainly thinks it is, and they're kind of meeting on different pages about that. So both Bashir and Sisko are, getting to know Dax, and Dax is kind of conveying to them a little bit more about what it means to be a Trill and change bodies. And we meet Miles O'Brien's wife, Keiko, who I love. This is not a spoiler. Who is, seems somewhat discontented with life on Deep Space Nine. And we follow her and her mission as she eventually starts a school for some of the kids on Deep Space Nine, including Jake, Sisko's son, and Nog, the young Ferengi from the pilot, the son of Rom. Episode 3! I swear I'm going to get through these. I swear.
No, this is great.
A lot of things happen.
Because some of these things I have legitimately forgotten.
I did have to go, like, I took my notes and still went through and had to, like, do some research episode summary-wise to be like, let me make sure that I remember which of these fell where.
Yeah, I was like, wow, I knew we got the Trill explanation, but really it was the same.
It was the same one as, a lot happened in A Man Alone. A Man Alone has a lot of things going on in the background. Yeah. Babel. We had an episode that was primarily, if not exclusively, focused on Kira, primarily not exclusively focused on Odo, and now we have Babel, which is more of a full cast, full station episode in its way. Babel, we see Chief O'Brien, our wonderful station engineer, going through, doing a lot of different repairs across the station, and eventually repairing the food replicators, which is how the people of the station get food. Food is basically replicated out of little particles of matter into real food. I've watched Star Trek for so long, I don't remember how they explain the food replicators, and I don't think I need to.
It's replicated out of science magic.
Exactly. In Next Gen, there's the famous, like, Picard will go over to a replicator in Next Gen and be like, I would like a tea, Earl Grey, hot, and a mug of tea will appear there. And you're like, how did that happen? And so that's just the image in my brain every time. The replicators, the science magic replicators. O'Brien is going through, doing repairs on the station, and eventually repairs one of the replicators, and we have a beautiful, ominous pan to a small beeping device that's stored in the replicator that he is unknowingly activated. Eventually, as this device presumably does its work, people on the station start to develop aphasia, which is a real thing, where they're not sort of the language centers in their brain. I do not remember the full scientific, actual real-world explanation for this. Please forgive me. But their abilities to communicate and read and write are sort of becoming jumbled up and nonsensical, and coming out as strings of unrelated words. Ben Sisko, as commander, upon realizing that this is something that is not simply localized to a single person, but is in fact spreading, the command watches Dax develop it spontaneously, does the sensible thing and immediately quarantines the station and says no one's coming in or out because this is clearly something that's spreading. The entire central crew of command starts to try to find ways to deal with this as more and more people begin to develop it. It is traceable to the replicators, and they find this small beeping device and surmise that it's some sort of essentially latent trap that was left there in the station, hardwired there. At first they think it might be something left by the Cardassians when they departed the station, and later they realize that it was actually something made by the Bajorans to go off and retaliate against the Cardassians when the Cardassians had control of the station, so it is Bajoran in origin. Major Kira starts trying to track down the Bajoran scientists that might have worked on it, and eventually tracks down Sir Maul, a research assistant who worked on it. She takes a shuttle off of the station, though she does not go down to the planet, which Sisko is adamant about her not doing, because they're again under quarantine, and she has a wonderful moment of yelling at him, being like, oh no, I'm not going to go anywhere. And Sisko gets the message that she has a plan, is going to do the plan, and gets kind of locks in with her on it and lets her go. She finds Sir Maul, the research assistant, who is being extremely cagey and not helpful at all and refusing to help, and beams him up to her shuttle without telling him. And then when he continues to refuse to help, essentially goes, well, because it's airborne now and it's mutated to become airborne and you just were beamed into my shuttle, your life is also now on the line, so you really better find a science magic way to fix this for all of us. Meanwhile, the only two people left in command after Sisko finally succumbs become Quark and Odo, who are a wonderful pair. Actually, a really effective pair. Quark waltzes into command when Odo is the only one left who has not been infected by the virus, and states that he's here to help. And he and Odo work together to get a ship that is in the process of potentially exploding out of the loading bay and away from the station before it explodes and takes part of the station with it, and thus stop the station from also exploding. And then they cure everyone, and everyone's fine. Finally, Captive Pursuit! I'm doing it. I'm hitting the flop beats. God
no,
help
you're
me.
doing awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Captive Pursuit. Another... I would say this is a bit of a full cast stage. We'll talk about this in a little bit. I have ways of classifying Star Trek episodes in my head that you may not. It's just a me thing. We have an alien appears through the wormhole from the Gamma Quadrant, the quadrant on the other side of the wormhole that is very far away in non-wormhole terms. Appears, and the station hails him, tries to get in communication with him. The alien seems to be in a great hurry, and they eventually convince him to bring himself and his ship in to the station and to dock so that they can repair it. The alien only refers to himself as Tosk. That's the only name that they're able to get out of him. His ship is repaired, though it seems that he's clearly fleeing from something or from some sort of conflict, and he winds up sort of befriending and becoming closer to O'Brien, as Chief O'Brien, our noble engineer, repairs his ship. Through the Gamma Quadrant wormhole come a bunch of hunters from the same planet, same area, same culture, who are here for Tosk. They appear on the station and immediately start firing guns with pretty little preamble, so the command crew starts fighting back. They eventually make their way to where Tosk is, and it becomes apparent through context clues in various forms of communication, at or not at gunpoint, as the case may be, that Tosk in this case is a moniker more related to a hunt that is a major part of this culture, where the alien that has come to the station from the Gamma Quadrant is on the run from these hunters who are trying to track him down until they kill him. This is a embedded part of their culture. It's something that goes on and that people are raised for and trained for, to be the prey or the quarry in this hunt, essentially. O'Brien, the rest of the crew as well a little bit, but primarily O'Brien, is deeply upset by this, doesn't want to see his friend die. Sisko is of the same school of mind, but also, as station commander, struggling with the fact that he has a duty and a right not to overtly interfere with other cultures due to the Star Trek Prime Directive, which I have questions for you about.
I did know that it existed.
Yeah, I had a note where I was like, this is the first time it's been mentioned in Deep Space Nine. And then I had to go do some fun research. So he essentially states that they can't really do anything about it. They must let the hunters take Tosk back to their planet in disgrace. O'Brien goes rogue is probably the quickest way to sum that up. O'Brien essentially, quote unquote, decides to help with this removal of Tosk by the hunters, and instead shocks and temporarily knocks out some of the hunters and gets Tosk back to his ship so that the chase can continue, so that he can continue fleeing with his life for longer and essentially die in honor the way that he states he wants to, rather than having ended this hunt, quote unquote, dishonorably by being on the station at the time. And so there is a somewhat bittersweet but more hopeful than the alternative ending as Tosk flees and the chase continues. And Sisko watches this happen, basically kind of nods and tells Odo, okay, go fetch O'Brien, but walk, don't run. And then reprimands O'Brien, being like, you can't do that. That's not a thing you can do. But O'Brien also is able to catch the fact that Sisko kind of tacitly let him get away with it. And that's Captive Pursuit. Those are our episodes.
That was amazing.
I did it.
You did it.
Hell
That was great.
Alright, so those are our episodes. That's Animorph, and that's Deep Space Nine. So
that was 4 episodes.
4 episodes of Deep Space Nine. A lot of things happening there. It's 4. Honestly, I would put it at like 6 plots because there's 4 kind of main episode A plots, and then 2 episodes that have a bunch of things going on in the background. So it's kind of 6 plot points worth, in my opinion.
Yeah, and even the Quark and Odo plot ties in with the other plot about the captain who really wanted to flee because he didn't want to get sick, and that's why they. So
yeah,
I mean, we did skip over some stuff. So
yeah, there's. I was trying desperately to be like, how can I boil this down while still keeping the vitality of the points?
I mean, you did great. I think, I was looking at my notes for this one book being like, oh man, I said 3 paragraphs and this is 7 bullet points.
There's a lot of thematic complexity that both these managed to kind of compress into a reasonably short amount of time. So Deep Space Nine episodes are only 45 minutes, but there's a lot going on in them. And Animorphs books are about 70 pages, but there's also a lot going on in them.
Yeah, we haven't talked about how Animorphs was written or released, but basically during the 90s, before the Wizard books, there was the way books worked for like middle schoolers were these long series of very short books written usually by like teams of ghostwriters that continued for a long time. Think like Babysitter's Club or Sweet Valley High, that sort of thing. And so the release schedule was like crunch because the books had to come out in time for the monthly book fair. So I think at some points, like, Animorphs books were being written in 2 weeks for release in a month. It was like you gotta drink some coffee and pray.
Stay up all night.
I don't know where I was going with this. I think it was that like we were talking about how short comparatively these media are, and like Animorphs is apparently something that you can write in 2 weeks. So
yeah,
and I guess also as a procedural network show, you would be churning out scripts like pretty fast too.
Yeah, I know. Something we were discussing when we were initially breaking these up is that Deep Space Nine has a lot of episodes. The first season has 19 or 20, depending on how you're numbering them, and that's the lowest number that any season has. And I don't quite remember. I'll do some research on what the production timeline was like, but it's Star Trek. They did 7 seasons of it, so I can't imagine it was slow and luxurious at any point. On the front of structure, because of course,
yes,
why we're here. I actually, having just summed up all the Deep Space Nine episodes, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about was your experience of and feelings on the fact that Deep Space Nine will have, not in every single episode, but will sometimes have this, we have 3 plot lines running simultaneous. We have A plot, B plot, and C plot kind of overlapping, where I think the major one in my mind being A Man Alone, where I didn't really realize till I summed it up that we have Odo's locked room murder mystery happening, Dax and Bashir, Cisco and Bashir, and Keiko and Miles, and Jake and Nog, and the schooling situation, all happening in about 45 minutes, versus like Babel, where it's a singular plotline the whole way through.
I think it works because Star Trek is such a lived-in universe that it makes sense that all of these things would be happening simultaneously. It's not, you don't necessarily have to be following like one person to the detriment of everything else, because that person that you're following exists within a context that is a bunch of different people living their lives, and also, I mean, it's TV. Of course, you have A, B, and C plots happening. But yeah, I think what makes Star Trek interesting is that it all feels like it's of a world instead of like, okay, here is the B plot. Okay, here's the C plot. Which, I mean, it still happens, but it does kind of feel like you can zoom back and be like, okay, this is day in the life, and you're on a ship with dozens of people, and they're living dozens of different storylines.
It feels a lot easier to kind of cut between plot lines in Deep Space Nine. I was finding that it would in, say, Animorphs, where if we'd gone to suddenly a B plot somewhere else in the midst of Rachel's adventures as Fluffers, I would have been like, what are we doing? I need to learn about Fluffers. Go back right now.
Fluffer McKitty. I'm sorry. We had one cat named Dude and one cat named Fluffer McKitty.
It's so real is the thing.
Yeah.
I just love that amidst the utter psychological horror of that household, Fluffer McKitty.
I mean, thematically, yes. That is...
I feel like that's a really good sum up of my experience with Animorphs so far, is the juxtaposition of those two things.
I mean, that was the pitch I gave you, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, my structure question... I didn't have a structure question. I had bullet points about structure. About, like, functions of second episodes.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of harder to do than pilots in some way because a pilot is laying the foundation for your premise, like your entire series premise and big conceptual themes that can fill 7 seasons of 26 episodes or 62 books and also a video game. It's... And
Sorry, hold on. Is there an Animorphs video game?
Yes.
What? You have not mentioned this detail to me before. You haven't mentioned this detail at all. There's a video game?
I'm kind of unclear on the specifics of it, and I think it may have gone through some production hell because...
That makes sense, yeah.
Of just, A, the logistics, and B, what it was going to be, because for a series that's all about war and horror and trauma to kids, it was then, like, in the 90s, like, or 90s or early 2000s. So, can we make a video game which has traditionally been the vehicle of, quote-unquote, encouraging violence?
Mm-hmm.
Not true. But yeah, that was kind of the stigma surrounding video games, and sort of we hadn't gotten to the point where video games had been exploring kind of other narratives around that, and so I think there was some apprehension about how are we going to adapt a series whose core themes are so antithetical to what was perceived in video games.
Mm-hmm.
So back to second episodes, though. A pilot is the big premise, but the second is, like, how are you actually going to execute this? Like, not like episode to episode, book to book. How is the formula going to be? And I think, it was really interesting watching the chunk of DS9 episodes, because you get the one that's, focused on Major Kira, and you get the one that's focused on Odo, and then you get the cast ones. And so it was a really great mix, first of all. But then you also get the progression, so, like, the first, past Prologue, A Man Alone, and Babel are all kind of insular in the station, and they're about the tensions within the station and deciding on loyalties within the station, trying to get that foundation together, because coming off Emissary, like I said, not a team. And now they're working on it.
They're doing better. They're doing better than they were.
They are. And then, Captain Pursuit finally brings us the first person from the Gamma Quadrant, so it's introducing this new, factor So it's like, okay, now that we've got ourselves kind of together, let's throw somebody else into the mix.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I guess in that sense, what did you think of Animorphs? Both construction and general thoughts on the madness.
God, so much. I love that you said the construction, and I know you mean the story construction. I was just brought to the fact that the last 20 pages were a fight with construction machines.
There's a lot of construction.
There's a lot of construction. They just keep going back to that construction yard.
I don't know why. It's not like a big point of trauma happened there.
I was about to say, it seems like a really great way to bring up some really bad memories. Alternately, just a really great landing pad for lots of alien ships. Yeah, I'm going to just keep being I loved it, which isn't the most elaborate thought. I loved I have written down sort of the beginning and how easy it is to adapt to routine under deeply unusual circumstances. The second book, beginning with this kind of moment of joy, is great, where they're all having fun as birds. Also made me deeply suspicious, because I assumed it could only go downhill from there, and I was right. It's like, oh no, they're happy now. This can't end well. There's no way that maintains for 70 pages. But no, we see them having adjusted kind of, obviously not well, but also kind of well, but also not well at all, to their circumstances and their new way of life, where we're catching up with them a little bit of time after the end of the first book. They've gotten used to timing themselves, wearing these suits so that they can morph in and out. They're having places to land in, ways to keep track. They still don't know what the hell they're doing, but they're adjusting to it, because the alternative is to kind of lose your mind and go crazy and not really be able to cope with any of it. And we get a lot of the mundane challenges of trying to sort of be a saving the world superhero while also in middle school. Going to practice, having homework and things due, having to do all of your assignments. I loved a lot of points that I think I predicted of complexity that would begin to show through in future episodes. I was starting to see the seeds of here, in that we got details about the hosts of the Yeerks being able to rebel. We have Chapman's entire plot line, which, oh my god, oh boy, and all of those details of hosts can rebel, psychological horror within that, the psychological horror having 2 out of 3 people in a household that are the adults being controlled by aliens and not the child, but also we don't want the child to be controlled by aliens. And because one of the things I had thought about was, I know at some point we'll have to get into the experience of those being controlled or possessed by Yeerks. And another point I'd been waiting to see come up was the points when the team of main Animorphs begin to disagree or have alternate plans, which was greatly exemplified when Rachel goes to turn into Fluffer's McKitty for the second time, and 3 of the other 4 members of the team are there, and she goes, "Where's Jake?" And the other 3 are like, "I don't know, he said he had some work to do. Oh, well, I guess we don't have him today." And I went, that's a lie. They've all been talking behind Rachel's back. And that's wild. And it worked out, honestly, really well in this, and well enough that she also didn't seem to be long-term mad about it. And I'm really interested to see if that happens again with slightly different results.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of that, last time we talked about kind of how you were waiting to see what you thought of Jake as a leader. And I was wondering if that had changed at all with book 2, where we see him leading again, obviously, but we also see somebody else viewing his leadership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very nice to see. It was very interesting to see Jake through someone else's perspective, just because we started with his. So this was the first time we've gotten an outside perspective of everyone else. And I think one of the first few chapters, we get Rachel talking about, like, he's a little bit, like, larger, more physical than the rest of us, good at taking charge. And I was like, this is wild, because I was inside that man's brain, that boy's brain, because he's a middle schooler. And so my experience of his narration was being like, you are a child, and you are very young and scared. And so there's a line early on where Rachel's talking about him in the way that you would talk about somebody else who is your peer. I was like, that's a kid. But obviously she hasn't been inside his brain, so she doesn't know that. It was great. I loved it. It's the entire... He turns into a...
He turns into a peregrine falcon.
Tick? A louse? Oh, sorry. What's the bug?
Oh, the flea.
Flea. Thank you. I was like, I know it's not a tick. Him turning into the flea is great. I think there's a lot of other moments of leadership that are leading up to that, and I also don't know if that qualifies technically as a moment of leadership. I loved that plot line and choice because that comes on the heels of Rachel's first experience as a cat, where she almost doesn't make it out in time because she's clearly very emotionally invested. The others are trying to tell her what to do. She is not doing that. And they talk behind her back and make the plan that Jake is going in with her next time and taking on this more dangerous morph, which I loved. I love that his kind of controls recklessness in that, which I do think is a leadership thing that I would also ascribe to Cisco.
Yeah, that was
somebody needs to go.
That was my corollary question, which was like, how does he compare to Cisco as a leader? Because we get a lot of how Cisco commands.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, not to immediately reverse it, I was going to ask you what your experience of Cisco commanding the station is over the plot to nearly blow up the wormhole, murder mystery, Agatha Christie style, aphasia outbreak, and new alien culture coming through the wormhole circumstances. What's your experience of Cisco's leadership like in charge of the station? What were your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's really interesting because, obviously he's serious and thoughtful and he considers all his options and he does, know and respect the Prime Directive, but also he has this, like, streak of mischievousness in him that, I mean, like, this is a man that we saw come aboard the ship assigned by the man who killed his wife, and he was like, okay, I'll do the best I can. And he meant it. And then he went and blackmailed Quark by throwing Nog in the brig. Like, that's the kind of person he is. He will, like, do his utmost best with integrity and honor in a bad situation, and he will also throw a kid in a brig if it's necessary.
Yeah. There's one of the notes I had written down for, I think it was Captive Pursuit. It was both in Captive Pursuit. It was in Captive Pursuit. It was also somewhere in. It was in Captive Pursuit and it was in Babel. In Babel, I think it was more in relation to Kira, but in both of the latter two episodes, I had a note where I was going. It's a very fun game of some sort to start tallying the number of times that many of the lead officers, but especially the two people in most direct charge of the station, Cisco and Kira, well, actually, no, this was more about Brian. Forgive me. It's a fun game to start tallying whenever anyone in command on DS9 does something that is probably, if not directly treason, at least adjacent to it. And what the responses are to that, and how often that becomes treason being a very specific word for a very overarching thing. But there's a lot of people going rogue as a matter of course, including Cisco.
Oh, yeah.
As a station precedent.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I think it was really interesting to see Jake in relation to that, I guess, because I think in a lot of ways he is as thoughtful as Cisco. It's just his brand of recklessness is a little bit more prominently on display. It's a very calculated risk that he he undertakes. And I think it's also that they both know that they're not going to stop their team. Like, Jake is not going to stop Rachel from doing what she thinks is right. Like, he's just not. He knows his people. Cisco knows his people. And all they can do is sort of try to mitigate the consequences.
The decision of turning into a flea to ride with Rachel and knowing you're not going to head that off in the past and so going along with her feels to me very, very parallel with both the moment of Cisco and Kira kind of coming to a head about Cisco being like, you can't leave because of the quarantine, and seeing that Kira is clearly planning to do something that might not be great but isn't going to endanger the planet, and giving her essentially the go-ahead, and also with Cisco clocking what O'Brien is going to do and tacitly enabling it and going along with it. Both of those feel kind of on a par with each other in terms of knowing your command, knowing the people that you're working with well enough to know when you're not going to stop them, and you instead need to work with that energy and direct it the best you can.
Yeah, well, I think that's both of their strengths. Like, they have a lot of strengths as leaders, but one of the strengths that is prominent and parallel in them is that they understand and trust their people. It's not that they specifically are the most talented or strongest or whatever. It's that they understand how the web works.
Yeah. On the front of character parallels, actually, what are your thoughts about Rachel and Kira in regards to these two pieces of media?
Rachel and Kira, wow.
Because I think we had the joke last episode about how if any two characters should be allowed to say fuck, it should really be Rachel and Kira. And with this being our book from Rachel's perspective, and Kira being, very prominent in all of these episodes, and we especially getting an episode right out of the gate focusing on her and her backstory and her struggles. What did you think of those two side by side?
Interesting. They're not the characters that I was like finding really interesting to connect, but ooh. I think there is a sense of like they are very righteous people. They have really strong internal senses of where they should be, and who needs them, who needs their protection, who their loyalty is, who they owe their loyalty to. Rachel is torn between this loyalty to her friend and like the logistics of fighting a war, and she knows it's not necessarily, logical. I mean, obviously, if you fight the war, that's going to be better for Melissa in the long run, but when it's right in front of her, it's hard for her to do the thing that would be better further out. Mm-hmm. When something is wrong right in front of her, she needs to fix it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what Kira is struggling with. I mean, she sees her old friend Tanalos. He's right there. He needs her, but she also has the sense that they do need her further out. They do need her in this political position, and like the way of only looking as far ahead as the next bomb is not gonna work out in the long run. Mm-hmm. It's not gonna be the best. And, I think Rachel, I mean, obviously, because the rest of the book happens, sees that at some level. But also her defining philosophy when she's like, okay, this is why I'm gonna fight this war, is for those really specific close moments, close horrors that she might be able to fix or mitigate. And I think it's probably similar for Kira in that even though she decides to put her loyalty in Cisco and in this longer political game, she's still all the time going to be reconciling that. That's not like the end of the end of this process. She's always going to have to balance a Bajor right in front of her with the future of whatever this political ideal is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they should both get to say fuck. They really should.
Yes.
Please, someone give them a break.
Kira should be allowed to morph half an elephant and scare all the warlords.
Yeah. I firmly believe in my heart that every time Kira is yelling at somebody behind a closed door where we can't hear her audio, she is in fact using every curse word that the networks would not allow, and it just changes whenever the doors open. I believe that in my heart. Firmly.
I was actually thinking about Odo a lot.
Ooh,
in this.
Yeah.
Like, so Odo, obviously, we see him morph.
Yeah. You just put him into Animorphs.
Yeah, I mean, he morphs a rat, and then he morphs out of a rat.
It's right there.
It's right there. It's a crossover. Put him behind the Star Trek door.
Who do we put? Which of the Animorphs kids do we put into Star Trek if we put Odo into Animorphs?
I think Tobias would find a way in.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can see that.
But yeah, I was wondering like what you thought about that, or if these two media have like different philosophies on morphing, or like what did you think? Because we have two media that have slugs and brains and morphing, and
the parallels are just so right there. Yeah. It's really beautiful.
But they are slightly different and have different narrative functions, and
it definitely. Odo's episode here is called "A Man Alone." I have written down somewhere Odo equals Javert ? Because really a lot of Odo things. Every time I see him, like you're kind of having your Javert moment here. You're having your lone inspector driven by righteousness and never ceasing to rest moment here. That's very Odo all the way down. It's very interesting kind of seeing the different given circumstances of, in both universes, this is an ability that is not common and that there is not a rule set for in society at large. The Animorphs obviously have acquired this power that no one else on Earth, as far as they know, has from the Andalite. And so they're figuring it out for the first time. And Odo, we see no one else on the station with this, and there are mentions through context clues or otherwise that this is not a thing that anyone, including potentially even Odo, necessarily understands. The fact that he can change and remorph his form at will into wrath and small animals, but also into fun things like bags and paintings. I love when he's on the wall as a painting at one point and just comes off, and it's really beautiful. You're like, good for you.
He's a chair, and
he's a chair. He could be anything.
He's a critical role chair if they hit it hard enough.
I was about to say either like Critical Role or oh god, this won't be the first time I reference Prey 2017, the video game, where everything could be a mimic, including your coffee cup and your chair and the fire extinguisher. He's one of those. You can't trust anything. Could be Odo. You never know. But in both cases, it's something where this is a skill set that's not like a known thing in the universe. It's an anomaly. And so it's really interesting to see the difference where, for as terrifying as this is for the Animorphs, they all have the backstory for themselves, the shared event of how they got this power. They know where it comes from. And they're also figuring it out together communally. Versus Odo, who we are meeting, who is an adult, has, we don't have evidence to the contrary right now in canon, if there is any point in his life where this has not been the way that he is, and seems very alone with it. He's an adult, he's the security officer, he is going about and living his life, but also he can shapeshift and morph. And it's kind of fun seeing it sit, for the moment, a little unexamined alongside everything, where a man alone doesn't, go super into it doesn't focus super on his powers and ability to morph as much as it does on the active murder scene that we're investigating. But the fact that he is the only one who could have done that because of his shape-shifting powers as far as he can see becomes a really big deal, where he is the only possible person that could be framed for the crime. His individuality, this trait of his, is the thing that's being used to frame him. And it's something that we don't necessarily know how much he still understands about it as well.
Yeah, it's a really solitary thing for Odo. And, I mean, it's solitary for the Animorphs, too, but also this shared community, like you said. I think what is interesting to me also is that right now, like, the actual shape-shifting that Odo is doing is kind of utility. It's like, turn into a chair so that you can spy. Turn into a rat so you can get through the little spaces and spy. Turn into a painting so you can spy.
He does a lot of spying.
He's a security officer. It's his job.
Yeah. He's Javert.
So, like, it's his existence as a shapeshifter, like, the core of him, that makes people question who he is. There's no question of what changes in him as he shifts. Like, if he shifts into a chair, he doesn't take on the characteristics of a chair mentally.
He does not have a hard time reckoning with the existence of a chair afterwards.
Right. It's his identity singular that is troubling for him. Like, his identity is not shifting. His identity is shifter.
Yes.
But the Animorphs, like, everything changes when they morph. Yeah. They are constantly having to redefine themselves, reconcile these new animal identities with their own. Sometimes there's separation, like the eagles, like, when they're flying in the cold open, Rachel's like, I can't fly, and Tobias is like, let the bird do it, and then, like, she leans into the bird's mind and then comes back. But then towards the end, you have that really, really moving sentence. I copied it into my notes, where she's purring in Melissa's lap, and she says, it reminded me of both my mothers, the human woman and the cat that had licked my fur and carried me around in her mouth. And so there is this overlap and changing as you change. And I mean, I think this is the Watsonian reason Animorphs can't just go around and, like, get more morphs. Like, narratively it would be kind of uninteresting if they were just like, okay, and now we're just gonna stockpile a bunch of animals that we can use in our war. But, like, if every time you get a new animal, it's a redefinition, it's a reconciliation, it's a battle, it's a joining, it's something, then, yeah, you can't... Stockpiling all of them would mean, like, shattering your own...
Psyche.
Yeah. And, I mean, there's already psyche shattering. We got the shrew.
God, yeah. And on top of all of it, I'll repeat it every single episode, they're middle schoolers. So the sense of identity that they're having to redefine, reckon with, and re-examine is already about as tenuous as it could possibly be, because they're going through puberty. They're already redefining their identity, but now they're having to do it even more.
And plus trauma.
Yeah! Oh, God. Let them be free.
Yeah. And I mean, this is also why I was thinking about Odo and Rachel, because, like, even if we say, okay, Odo's shapeshifting is utilitarian mostly right now, and Rachel's is a constant, like, push and pull of a bunch of different animal minds. But even if we say, Odo is utility and Rachel is, like, this push and pull of different minds within her that she has to reconcile, both of them fundamentally have this sense of honor like they want
What
to
is
do
right, capital R.
Yeah, and they get really, really angry when people learn. Yeah. Probably why Odo and Kira get along so well.
Yeah. I greatly enjoyed, I think I had completely forgotten that it happens, and it's very nice in rewatching Deep Space Nine to have seen, I will frequently kind of be like, oh, I think I remember where this episode might be going, but A, it's been a very long time, and B, that means that things will come out of nowhere and, like, whack me with a 2x4 even more than normal. That being said, I greatly enjoy the scene in past Prologue where Kira goes to Odo's office and sits in the corner of Odo's office as she's trying to sort out what to do, and they have a really great conversation with regards to the two of them and their senses of what you can clearly tell of honor and justice and loyalty and the right thing to do. It's great. It's a really, really great conversation of Kira... Odo not talking Kira into anything. Odo only telling Kira what she already knows she is feeling. And you get a sense of how long they've known each other and how much on that framework there.
Yeah.
It was really great. I loved that scene. Yeah. On the front of Odo, I've also got written down the line from Quark where he's defending Odo and going, I don't think he could have done this murder, and someone in the bar says, "You're his worst enemy," to which Quark replies, "That's the closest thing he has to a friend." Which is such a thing to say.
I mean, for a Javert character, yeah.
And it's great. It's really, really great.
It's great.
Yeah. We have that, and then not one episode later, they're running command together.
Yeah, I think that was a really fun extension of that. I mean, I know we've talked about how one of the things you like about DS9 is it starts to become more and more serialized. And that wasn't necessarily like a serialization point, but I think, it was fun seeing that dynamic crop up consecutively.
It's something that I'm always very, especially with some of the more modern day shows that are, fewer episodes and written kind of as a piece, broken into episodes, rather than episodes one after the other. I've always found it really interesting with things like Star Trek, where I know different people wrote different episodes. They all had a similar degree of baseline knowledge, but not, as opposed to, one writer writing a singular novel. I know when watching Star Trek that not everyone could have had everything that's happened in all the previous episodes for this set of characters in their mind the way that I would if I was writing every single episode back to back. Even if, like, some of them, I'm sure many of them tried, but it's also, not logistically possible necessarily, especially with how production schedules work. So it's always very cool to see, and I feel like it happens a lot in DS9, points like that where whether that was an intentional writing choice or more the kismet of how things align and how the writer's room decided a thing was going to develop, or a mix. Yeah, it's a really cool extension.
Speaking of dynamics, I guess we kind of glossed over the fact that this is the Animorphs 2 is narrated by Rachel. So, and it's rotating from Jake. So I was curious if you had any, like, other more general, aside from, like, Rachel's perception of Jake, thoughts on her narration, how it differed, if you got anything new out of the dynamics. Because also, like, the other thing is the cold open, which is amazing, and again, birds stealing guns out of people's hands. And beer. Guns and beer.
And then dropping the guns, they're like, I just flew a mile and dropped it in the ocean.
Yeah. You probably didn't need it.
The collective decision of just like, somebody who's going to do that doesn't need the gun. So true. It's great.
I'm going to read you my bullet point on what I think the Animorphs formula is later. But
oh, I can't wait.
But the cold open is also a re-exposition of the characters, the premise, what is happening, so that people who picked up the second book without having read the first book could, reasonably follow along. And that's how these are designed. so that if you picked up book 47, you could maybe possibly figure out what's going on. I don't know if that works that far into the series, but
at least the first several.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. But yeah. So we do get Rachel's perspective on everybody and what is happening, and yeah. But the question stands.
Yeah, this is not so much a Rachel perspective question, though I will immediately jump back to that, as I did finish this book immediately going, I can't wait to get Marco's perspective, which is entirely driven by the fact that I love characters who are super, not that anyone in Animorphs isn't. I love characters holding a shield up aggressively over their emotions at all times, especially with humor, which I think applies to especially Rachel and Marco. I'm very excited to see inside his mind what the process between his thoughts and feelings on events and the dialogue that we get from him from the outside and the choice we get from him the outside is. I'm excited to see that.
It's really funny because, again, I'm very surprised by how little you know of Animorphs.
I don't know anything. Everything that I already knew, we've already gotten. I don't know what's going on.
Because I was like, wait, you don't know that it rotates?
Nope.
You didn't know that it so you don't even know when the book that is his perspective is coming.
It could be the next one. I have no clue. I don't know. I don't know the answer. I didn't know that this one was going to be Rachel until I opened up the book and looked and went, that looks like Rachel probably on the cover, and then it was Rachel. No, I loved being in her perspective and point of view. The initial introduction we get to her from Jake's point of view with regards to her having a certain degree of confidence and righteousness and focus in that regard. I loved, especially with the interiority of the cat, getting to see all the places, how much of that is truly rooted inside of her and how much of that is also standing right alongside fear and terror that the others aren't picking up from her, or at least that Jake wasn't. There's a really great line about, from her perspective, that's quite self-aware, where I don't remember the specific wording, I unfortunately did not write down, where she mentions kind of knowing that everyone else sees her as very confident and assertive and with it, and that also knowing that they don't really see how terrified she is right now at the same time, which is a level of self-awareness that I love. And there's also many points where she's not aware of that. When she's reaching into the cat for strength and basically just kind of receding from events and trying to be as brave and as essentially honorable and take a hit for her friends as she can when she thinks she's not going to be able to change back, but is also extremely, extremely scared and kind of unable to do anything other than just kind of wait to be taken, and her friends have to rescue her, is great. And I love the blending of that with the cat. It's really... I have written down that I feel like, had a lot of... I know it's about dynamics. Sorry, I'm just talking about Rachel.
No, I love talking about Rachel, and you're so correct.
That both she and... This might be where I kind of came to the point of comparison with her and Kira in past Prologue, which was... situations where there's not a right answer or a good answer or an answer that's going to end with somebody feeling good or feeling saved, because of the experience that she has with wanting to help Melissa, and similar to the first book, very little changes in the direct status quo of things. By the end of the book, Chapman is still under your control. Melissa is still... saddened by what's going on with her parents. Rachel's been able to provide some temporary comfort as best she can, but they haven't, solved the problem. Which is a little bit similar to, Kira dealing with the fact that the entirety of her position and her place in the war versus her place now is not a thing that she's going to be able to make a single grand glorious gesture in any direction to reconcile with. And that it's not a solvable thing. It was great seeing outside of Jake and seeing because the definitely we are related but we're not quite siblings dynamic of that. she really, it feels like she really looks up to Cassie a lot, which I love because I want to see more of that. I want to see more of them interacting and being friends. And again, I just want to see inside Marco's brain. Oh, and also, I really like whatever Rachel and Tobias have going on.
Oh, yeah. I just haven't asked about that yet.
Because there's the entirety of this, the second that we had the first moment of Tobias and Rachel speaking individually through the mental connection rather through everyone else, I was like, interesting. First of all, we've established we can do that. Second of all, I love that. I love that he and Jake are the two who are kind of the most proactively calling her out on her fears and her insecurities and also her flaws and her mistakes. Also the ones who are looking out for her. Not that Marco and Cassie aren't, clearly, but a lot of this book is first Tobias and then Jake kind of being there to be like her partners as they go into this and taking care of her as best they can, with the problem being that that's not always possible logistically, and also she has different ideas than them on when to get out of the situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Rachel and Jake dynamic is really interesting this book because at the beginning you sort of get the sense that, you know, Rachel is describing him as a peer, but also as sort of like this younger cousin. Like, he's competitive. Like, you sort of get the sense that she's protective over him, and then it's sort of like she doesn't quite know how to view him as a leader instead of somebody is to protect. And so she underestimates him. So when she goes in again as Fluffer McKitty, she's like, okay.
Fluffer McKitty.
She totally buys the explanation that Jake is just off.
So funny.
Yeah, she's just like, cool, yeah, that.
It's a really good job of writing where the audience immediately, I mean, maybe it's just me, but reading it nowadays, but I caught that, you know, instantly, and it was great watching Rachel not catch it.
Yeah, Rachel was like totally like, sure, yeah, he's just off somewhere. And then when it's revealed that Jake is on her and that she's being caught and taken to be executed, she's like, Jake, just go. I can handle it, just go. And she legitimately thinks he goes. She's like, and then she's like, Jake, I need you to come back. And he doesn't answer. And she's like, good. That means he's gone. So it's like she underestimates him, and she also underestimates how she underestimates his intelligence, like, and capability as a leader, but also how much he cares for her. Like, he wouldn't abandon her like that. Like, on some level, she's like, yeah, they will just abandon me. Yeah. And then they don't.
Yeah, she's not, I don't know if martyr is necessarily the right word, but she's very ready, although obviously not, you know, jazzed about it, but she spends the back part of the book in panic and worry, but also in preparation for, like, this is the way it has to be. I have to, if I have to be the one of us to go down and stay in this form the whole time so that none of the others can be caught, it's great. I will do that if we have to. And just does not, there's another great moment when she's having the conversation with Mr. Free where there's a flash of movement somewhere and she's like, that's probably nothing. I was like, you didn't consider that they're probably mounting a rescue attempt? That wasn't a thought or a hope in your brain? You just immediately dismissed that and assumed you were dead? Just immediately? Wow. Rachel!
Dare I say, sometimes as clueless as Bashir. You want to talk about Garrick?
I'm so curious for your thoughts on both Garrick and Bashir and Dax. Bashir was kind of hanging out, having some interesting social interactions during all. Bashir spent one of these episodes trying to solve a station-wide medical problem, and the other two just having the worst time anyone's ever had with interpersonal relationships. That's a lie. There will be many worse times, but.
So, my thoughts on Garrick as a Garrick?
That's a great question.
Garrick?
I'm trying desperately to think of how I didn't understand because I never pronounced it.
Because he has like this weird like lilt to his voice, which is great. But it's hard to replicate, and I don't know how to.
I've always said Garrick, just
Garrick.
without the but I don't quite know I don't quite know if that's fully correct, but I know it's at little what I've defaulted to. So
well, you understand who I'm talking about. Unlike Bashir.
Love watching the subtext sail over his head.
It's so fun. My thoughts on Garrick are that he's a really great character to have. I didn't know when he was introduced. I didn't know it was this early.
So quick.
Yeah, but it makes sense because they needed somebody like this. Like, in a story that's all about the tenuous ending of a war between these factions, who you're gonna trust, how to rebuild, you needed somebody like Garrick, who is kind of this epitome of, well, we can kind of maybe trust him, but also not, and it's a very political game, and also maybe he has some genuine truth to his feelings. Like, you never know, but you have to work with him, and he's helpful sometimes, and not others.
The helpfulness varies.
Yes. My thoughts on Garrick and Bashir are that I didn't understand when I first watched this why people shipped them so much, and now from the first interaction they had, I can totally see it. Like, I can see why.
Their immediate first scene. Yeah, no, yeah. It's great. They work so well in scenes together. And it's so funny to watch. Or not even fun. It's just fun to watch. Because, yeah, there's... For reference, the Bashir has a wonderful moment in the second episode where, in order to eavesdrop on the details of this like illicit sale that's taking place, which is going to happen at Garrick's tailor shop, Garrick tracks him down and goes, "You should come and buy a new suit for me at, like 7:30 p.m. this evening, specifically, and stay in the dressing room the whole time and not be overheard." And Bashir looks him in the eye and goes, "What are you talking about? I don't need a new suit." Despite having been so excited about how Garrick is clearly a spy or a secret operative of some sort, not picking up any of those clues.
I was actually talking about their very first interaction, where Garrick is coming up to Bashir to people watch.
Yeah.
But it does... You can very much read it as like this overt sort of come on that Bashir also subtext
immediately leaves his mind. I mean, it wasn't there to begin with. That it leaves his mind implies that he registered it at all, which I don't think he does. Yeah, no, it's very that's absolutely how it comes across, and it's great.
And Bashir and Dax, I mean, okay, look, to be fair to Bashir, everybody is trying to flirt with Dax. Like, everybody except Cisco, who everybody is worried about flirting with Dax.
Yep.
Everybody's... I mean, I get it. I totally get it.
Yep.
So, yeah. But...
I love her.
But yeah, I mean... I guess if... I have a bullet point on here that's just trill check-in! Exclamation point!
Now what did you mean by that? Do tell me.
We get more of the Yerks, and we get more of the trill. We get the actual explanation for what a trill is, sort of, which is I was sort of right. They're symbiotic, they attach to hosts, they propagate that way. But yeah, I was wondering if you had any more thoughts on that sort of...
Yeah. It's very... a little bit a la putting Odo's ability to morph and the Animorphs' ability to morph side by side. It's fun where the Trill and the Yerk have... such similar when you look at it and try to explain from the surface concept, for lack of a better term, and then such radically different, at least from what I'm currently understanding, such different ways they're playing out in the plot with the realities of how these interactions actually work. The entire plot line with Chapman and the Yeerks is great and so affecting, and something that I knew we would have to get into the Yeerks and their hosts and the willingness or not thereof the second that there's that chunk in the first book about how some Yeerk hosts are willing and happy to be along for the ride, or at least accepting and neutral, and many are also actively fighting, which is a wild spectrum to have.
Actively fighting, and to be clear, this is always a feudal fight. Like, and I don't think, I mean, no, I won't say that, but like, it's never
it's not a fair equal battle.
No, it's not a fair equal battle, and it's never an actual. There's not a hope of Chapman actually regaining control of himself, like, permanently. Yeah. It is just simply to gain enough that he makes the Yeerk look bad. Like, I want to be careful here in saying, that everybody would need to rebel or anything, or that this is a story where if you just fought hard enough, you could overcome this. That's not it. Yeah. It is extremely, extremely futile to fight the Yeerk control.
Yeah. It's very, it's cast. It was interesting to me to learn that there is any possibility of that, because of course it was, it's not clear necessarily in the first book, at least where I was reading it, where I was going, I can't tell just yet how much, if when a Yeerk enters a host, if it's just the host lights out completely, no sort of sentience or presence at all, and then that switches back when the Yeerk leaves, and on and off. If it was just a light switch, one party departs and the other is there and then comes back in. And so the second book, elaborates that it is a feudal fight, but the other party is a little bit present. I guess the first book alludes to this a little bit. There's a moment where Jake mentions seeing a little flash of Tom that he knows in the eyes of Tom that's controlled. Which, of course, opens up to the beautiful psychological horror possibility, because it would be much kinder and simpler if this was an iteration where when somebody had a Yeerk in their brain, they were not present for the rest of the events and had no knowledge or follow-through at all. Of course, the much worse option is that they're still there in the host body somewhere, even if they can't do anything about it. That's much more terrifying and much more upsetting. And of course, it's the one we go with, which I love.
Yeah, I mean, I always... And I think this goes along with my question about trills and stuff. Do you think... Because I was thinking about this. Do you think that the Chapman's Yeerks are at all sympathetic to their hosts?
That's really fun. There was a...
And if so, is that possibly why they can gain so much relative control?
Yeah, there is... I was certainly thinking that was a little bit of a possibility, because there is a line during one of the communications with Visser 3 where he is talking to the Yeerk exclusively, and the Yeerk, and I don't believe at that point we have any reason to believe that it could be human Chapman breaking through, but the Yeerk refers to Melissa as my daughter before stopping and correcting himself and saying, Chapman's daughter. And that is during a portion where it's not where we're seeing the host try to break in. And while that's not necessarily indicative, it's of direct sympathy to Chapman, it is that kind of idea that the Yeerk, that while it's not necessarily indicative of... Well, actually, I can extrapolate from text. I would say it's indicative of a lot. It's that idea that the Yeerk has, in the Yeerk's mind, is, playing this part enough that, and is involved enough that slip up is possible. And that seems to me to indicate is not even necessarily sympathy for Chapman. It could be, sympathy or at least not active hatred for Melissa. It's a really great line either way. And I think that also the Yeerk and Chapman also grants there's a moment when he's facing off with Visitor 3 where he is the one to kind of be the intermediary and say, the host body wants to speak with you and puts that option forth, as opposed to saying, hey, I'm trying to shut this down right now. Obviously, I'm not going to let him speak with you ever again at any point. Right. Which indicates to me at least a little bit of not full out hatred, some form of respect, some form of understanding there, which makes sense given that we know that Chapman has not submitted joyfully to this, but did agree to this under conditions. Which is, again, it's really good psychological horror.
We didn't talk about this I didn't talk about this in the summary, but when Chapman is allowed to talk to the Visser, there's this really visceral description of him trying to figure out how to use his body again.
Yeah.
Because he hasn't been in control of it. It's like his control is atrophied inside himself. Mm-hmm. And so he has to, figure out how to move his mouth so he can speak.
Yeah. Yeah. Whew.
Yeah, it's great.
It's really great. I love body horror.
Yeah.
And then we put that, and especially just the second book crystallizes between the two Chapmans, that Yeerk possession of a body is very much a split thing, a thing where that little bit of fight, though it is a futile effort, it is not something that can be won, is possible, but it is one entity coming into and possessing the other, and the other being trapped there in some state of consciousness for the ride, and they're separate. They're not the same person. Melissa is confused as to why her parents are different people now, because they are. And that contrasts wildly with what's going on with the Trill,
yes.
Where Dax is spending an episode explaining to people to various degrees about the fact that she is the person that Cisco knew, and also she's different now. And that those are the same thing, and also they're different things. And that multiple things are true all at the same time, including the change in her personality and her physical form and the addition of new things and this morphing of identity. And Cisco is wrapping his head around this relatively well.
Yeah.
And Bashir is doing something.
Bashir has not even touched it with his head.
Bashir is standing on the other side of the room.
Yeah.
What did you think? What do you think of at least what you have seen of the way that the Trill humanoid body versus slug as an entity operate in juxtaposition to the fact that the Yeerks and their hosts are so clearly separate? Right.
Well, I think the very simplistic way to put this is that the Trills are good and the Yeerks are bad. Which is not necessarily my view of them, but that's how the story is, at least at first, constructed. Obviously, we get Dax, who is good, and then we get this evil race of alien slugs who are bad. I think it's really interesting to see where the Animorphs draw the line between what is Yeerk and what is not Yeerk, because even though the binary exists very clearly in the head of the person in a way that it doesn't exist for the Trill, the Animorphs are just yeah, let's go stomp all over some Hork-Bajir controllers.
Mm-hmm.
And then, also are immediately faced with, oh no, Tom is, there's Tom in the Yeerk, and there's Chapman in the Yeerk, but then there are all these controllers they have to view as a single bad thing in order to fight. But yeah, I think also it'll be interesting to see what we get of the Trill culture, because in the Animorphs, this book, we got a little bit of the Yerk politics that you were hoping for, and I didn't remember would come this early.
A lot of things in both these episodes in this book happening a lot earlier than we remember.
I know. I was like, wow, yeah, we're getting into the Council of 13, the numbers with the names, like, yeah, but so we're starting to get a sense of how the Yerks operate, which is a bad management. We have Yerks. We know that the Yerks think differently. First of all, we have Visser 3, who's all maniacal, but then we have Yerks who are just like, I'm tired of this war, and I wish the Council of 13 would just yeet Visser 3 off here, and I'm scared of him. I'm scared that he's gonna eat me. I'm scared.
Nobody likes Visser 3.
Nobody
is a fan of Visser 3.
Yeah, they're all
on no side of this.
Right, they're all scared of. Yeah, so I'm interested to see if we ever get to meet more Trill and seeing if how that society is set up. I don't know if obvious. I don't know, but I don't think Trill are currently embroiled in a war effort, which obviously changes how a culture, is. There's a home culture, and then there's the military culture of that. So, what would a Trill like? Honestly, what would a Trill military be like?
This is so dumb, and I'm so sorry. I hate that you did say Trill military, and we went, Trilitary. And immediately all conscious thought left my body in favor of making a pun, which is not helpful to the analysis, but really funny to me personally. Yeah. It's very different circumstances that we're encountering, a single instance of the joining of Host and Slug in Trill versus the ongoing war effort from a variety of Hosts and Yerk. Yeah. It's kind of as far apart as it could be.
Yeah. And then, and also, the binary that we've been talking about, we've mostly been talking about mentally, but also there's a sense of binary bodies as well. There is the Slug, which is separate from the Host body, and the Yerk actually has to leave it and then reinvade it. Whereas I think a Trill, in the same way that they're conjoined mentally, so close, the Slug doesn't leave.
Yeah, we haven't gotten any indicator that this is a thing that, not that Yerking is necessarily Yerking? Not that the Yerk process is necessarily non-permanent, but it's a thing that goes through stages and through a cycle of the Yerk leaving and returning, and we haven't gotten indicators of that being a thing for the Trill necessarily. I said to be super duper vague.
I would honestly be surprised if that turned out to be the case. Obviously they have to leave when they die, when the Host dies, but it seems like in the same way that they're conjoined mentally, permanently, they are bodily, or they should be,
in an ideal situation.
It's
also really fun watching. Again, this is a thing that format differential wise, obviously Animorphs is a book, so I am reading it and putting more of my imagined. I'm putting a lot of imagined things into Animorph because I'm reading words on a page, and then I get to take a lot of interpretive things out of DS9 because I'm seeing people's acting choices, not just the script. Right. But I love. One of my favorite things throughout all of DS9 will always be watching Dax on screen, because of the fact that in all of these episodes when we're interacting with Dax, you do stare at her and go, you seem like you are many centuries old. And it's really great. I love watching actors play and I love, as an actor, playing a character that age-wise and experience-wise does not, match the age or experience you might assume from the body they're in.
Acting choices.
Yeah, it's just very cool watching a lot of Dax's scenes and a lot of the just authority and experience that she is speaking with, where you kind of you do stare at her interact, and a lot of also, I think some of it might also be like, how she responds to Bashir, where it's with the attitude of somebody that's had enough, like pretend like romantic, sexual, like platonic relationships to that there's nothing that's it's not going to necessarily faze her. It does maybe a little bit, but she is reacting with a level of experience and like, oh, I've probably experienced this in other scenarios in other lifetimes before. That's
Maybe
really
on
fun.
The opposite side. I don't know.
Yeah, that's really fun to watch because you look at the two of them and you go, these two people seem to be about the same age, and it's so fun to watch Terry Farrell acting like somebody who is several centuries old. That's the end of the comment. It just makes me happy. It's really great.
A fantastic comment, a necessary one. We should always give actors their flowers.
I'll just talk about how much I love all the actors in DS9 forever. It'll happen every time. I'll never stop. Did we have anything else that we wish to... Other questions? Other thoughts?
Because I wanted to ask a question about Captive Pursuit, which was great, but which was, I mean, honestly, when I was watching this set, it was really fun ending on Captive Pursuit, because, like, how much are the Animorphs like Tusk? Like, they are sort of, they've been made to fight this larger enemy. They're engaged. I think there's a point where Tusk is explaining why he likes, or why he respects the hunt so much, which is that you outwit the enemy and live to fight another day. Which is basically the vibe of the end of Animorphs.
Both of the books so far.
Both of the books so far, which, I mean, if the first part of something is a premise foundation and the second part is an execution foundation, it's telling us, well, I guess the bar is just survive and fight again later.
Yeah.
But I mean, like you said, it's such a bittersweet and hopeful ending with Tusk, this fighting another day, and it's not hopeful in Animorphs. I mean, they rescue Rachel, they rescue Melissa. Rachel has gained this new understanding of why she is fighting, but also, really, is there a way for the Animorphs to die with honor?
Yeah.
In this fight, like.
Yeah, it's very... The ending of every Animorphs book so far, and also the ending of Captive Pursuit, kind of perpetually... There's both that sense of hope of we've lived to fight another day, but then also every time that I encounter them, especially with how much both of them are about, another step in the continuation of, I guess it's not technically continuation of war in Captive Pursuit yet. It's somewhat separate from the true plot line, but the point still stands that hope is always, to me, coupled with that sense of, they have to kind of pick themselves up and go, we survived, that's good, that's something, that's meaning. And not that they shouldn't do that, especially because, again, they're kids. It's kind of the step one to cope. But that at a certain point, there's a lot of, a lot of meaning and perspective and hope gets put into something that is a futility that's going to keep going. Like, right. I wrote down the way that the second book ends with, where is it?
There will always be a next time.
Yeah, there will always be a next time until the Andalites return. And of course, my experience of hitting that line was being like, I'm 2 books into what is a many book series. I have no idea what could happen in the future. But 2 books in, the until the Andalites return feels quite hollow already. feels quite hollow already. It feels very Waiting for Godot. There is a point that we have to look at and believe in for the sake of hope, for the sake of trusting that somebody else has power to intervene, that even if we are having problems in our present moment, there is an end game beyond this. And how true that is up for debate. Again, we are beyond things I know about Animorphs. I don't know if the Andalites are returning, but hitting that as the end line, I mean, it was like, oh, I don't like that. I don't like that. You have to say it, and in your place, I would also have to say it to myself, and you have to believe it, and I don't like it because that is a star in the sky that I don't know if is ever going to fall the way that you want it to. But you have to say it anyway. But it's a Ouroboros type moment, and similarly with the hunt, it's very.
Here's the thing. Yeah, I think it's really interesting that Captive Pursuit is. It's an ensemble story, but it's also very clearly O'Brien.
Yeah.
And I don't think we would have gotten that same feeling if it had been Kira. Kira has always, in her episode, honor is a very tenuous thing. Her understanding of wars and fighting is colored by the understanding that to fight a war is almost to stain honor as a concept irrevocably. Yeah. There can be no dying with honor, really, for her. But O'Brien isn't every... I actually found myself liking O'Brien a lot, more than I, remembered liking him, because of
O'Brien's
that.
Really fun.
Yeah, because of that kind of everyman nature to him in a series where all of the characters are really cool, but also very conceptual. Like, you have the science officer who's like a symbiotic species, and you have like the young untested medical doctor. They're very tropey in the best way, and then O'Brien is sort of the character where I'm seeing a lot of like really everyday mundane characteristics that's really fun. But his understanding of fighting it seems completely different. I don't know if that's true or whether like he had that same outlook on Next Gen, which kind of carried over. But I think if we had gotten this ending from Kira's perspective, it would have been very, very bleak.
Yeah, it feels a lot less bleak when it's Orion. You're so right, honestly. Yeah, it's also, he is really the closest to one of us in the current century being on Star Trek that I think there is on the station. Not that many other characters also don't fulfill that role, but Sisko's had his wonderful dream experience with creatures in the wormhole, and also gone through the Battle of Wolf 359, etc., etc. All of that. Every time I say Wolf 359, Wolf 359, like the podcast. I feel like that's also helped somewhat mentally by the fact that 2 episodes ago we had we met O'Brien's wife and a kid, and she's an engineer, and again, it's the closest to like, that's my neighbor that you can kind of get. And so...
Oh, speaking of, what do you think of... We get a lot of family stuff in both of these. And I think in Jake's book, it was a lot of like the concept of family being invaded, but in Rachel's, it's very like specific to her, in the sense that Jake's is very nuclear and normal, and in Rachel's we get details about like specific occupations, and kind of we get extended scenes of their dynamics in the house, probably to contrast with how bleak it is at Melissa's. But and then on DS9 we get obviously O'Brien, his wife, and also that really heartbreaking moment in Babel with Jake and Cisco, and
yeah.
broke my damn heart.
Yeah, I got to that, I just kind of had to stop and stare at the screen for a while and be like, ooh, ooh. So, every time that Cisco, like, you know, takes Jake by the shoulders and is like kissing the top of his head or just kind of holding him, I just turn into a puddle on the ground.
I mean, what did you think of Rachel's family? What do you think of Keiko and her?
I'm spoiled by having met Keiko a little bit before on Next Gen.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That's another great point. Yeah. Keiko and Molly, O'Brien's wife and daughter, are characters that we've seen a time or two on Next Gen. I don't think it is a spoiler necessarily to say that we see more of them on DS9 than we did necessarily there. They came up. They were recurring characters in Next Gen. That was part of those plot lines. And when O'Brien made the transition over between shows, they also did, because that's how that would work in the plot. It makes perfect sense. And then also it just makes me happy. I'm like, yay, they're here now. And it's great. I loved, you know, we have the psychological horror going on with Jake's family in book 1, oh god. And then in book 2 we have Rachel's family, not necessarily as a bastion of normalcy, but Rachel's having a different problem, which is the problem of having to... Jake also has to pretend that everything's fine and okay. But in that case, it is because there is an active... His older brother has a controller. It is a controller. It's an active threat and worry, versus the scene where, you know, Rachel's sister sees her come out of her nightmare and genuinely wants to help, and Rachel has to deal with the fact that she can't confide in her loved ones about this, not because they're... First of all, she has them, like, she can't be 100% sure that, you know, her sister is not also does not also have a yerk, but as far as we know, that's not true. But even with that, she certainly can't confide in them about the secret because it would endanger them. Yeah. Which is, you know, the terrible other flip side. Not that it's not necessarily easier to be able to not trust your family because they're actually on the other side of this, but it's also terrible having well-meaning people that you now kind of have to step into to protect without them knowing about it at all.
Yeah, and then also her parents are divorced.
Yeah,
and that is it's not like a through line, but I do love how she sort of connects that to Melissa, and then is like, no, but that wasn't really the same. They did love me. Yeah. And I love what she says, which is like, love is so strong. It's like a suit of armor.
Yeah. Oh.
And like, hey, so true. But also, it's almost heartbreaking that she conceptualizes it as an armor.
Yeah.
Like she's already thinking about fighting
in battle.
And for, like, out of protectiveness, but like, that's
still,
it's very like in this vein of martyring.
Yes, she is in the mode of fighting, and it comes from a very noble and righteous place, but that doesn't make it any less, you know, kind of devastating to witness. It's a wonderful thing to fight for the people you love, but also it's very terrible in some ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the note, she leaves a note for Melissa at the end in Melissa's locker, and it devastates me.
Because I know that I don't even know how that would help.
It's not even... It's a symbol type note. It's just saying that her dad loves her. It may do nothing at all, or even worse than nothing, but then it's also that futility thing of like, I have to do something to make sure that what her father is actually doing for her to protect her gets acknowledged somehow, even if it might not work, even if it's probably going to get received. Who knows how? Rachel's just like, I have to do something. Which is true for the whole book, is Rachel going, I have to do something. Doing something is better than nothing at all.
Yeah.
I have to, for other people and for myself. Yeah.
All right. What are your questions before we get into predictions?
Oh yes, my fun question. So I had a fun question. I had two fun questions. I had one from each side, which was that I was curious. If our kids from Animorph were DS9 crew members, as I'm sure you've gathered the basic. Thank you, Star Trek, for so helpfully color coding your uniforms. The Star Trek kind of breaks down. There's less color coding, I get, because security is different on DS9 than it is on other Star Trek shows, heavy quote. But if the kids from Animorphs were DS9 crew members, what their roles would be. Your thoughts?
Now, see, it depends on... There are roles they would like to be, and roles they would fill if they had to.
Uh-huh. Yeah, those are not always the same.
Right. And let's see. I'm sort of unclear on how Major differs from Lieutenant.
That is true. I could also give you at least my understanding of the Star Trek, if it helps, because the titles don't actually mean that much, for what it's worth, to my knowledge.
Right. Well, Cassie is obviously the Doctor.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think Jake would probably like to be security, but would end up being commanding officer. I think Rachel would end up being security, but maybe not head of security. Just like one of the
two guys that Odo summons out of nowhere to cut off Tosk.
Yeah, she's good at getting pointed in a direction and
released.
I think if Jake is the commanding officer, then Marco can be his lieutenant or major, the equivalent of either Dax or Kira. I'm not really sure how their roles differ yet. But if Jake isn't the commanding officer, then he's just hanging out.
Marco's just off to the side.
Tobias is people watching.
Tobias is sitting on the top of the promenade vibing. Just hanging out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then my other question was your thoughts on how, when I say the DS9 crew, I must, I guess, for our sanity, simplify it to, the 6 to 7 officers that we're following, but how they would react to getting thrust into the Animorphs base scenario of you have the ability to shapeshift now and you must use it to save the world, essentially.
I think they'd be cool with it.
All of
I mean,
that's fair. Honestly, their threshold for weirdness is also probably higher than these middle schoolers.
Yeah.
By a fair amount.
Yeah, their spectrum of being cool with it would vary. I think Dax would love it. Kira would hate it at first, and then eventually, understand its utility and get thrills out of certain morphs, probably. I don't know. Odo might be a little bit neutral towards it, or even kind of haughty about it. I was doing this first, man.
I have superiority over this over all of you.
They can't even turn into a chair. Bashir would love it and then hate it.
Yeah. I can see Bashir having the deep interest and curiosity in it, and then not quite realizing when he's bit off more than he can chew.
Cisco would not be pleased, but it would be he wouldn't be pleased by either the tool or the responsibility that it came with, but seeing is that he's gotten saddled with that responsibility, he would appreciate having the extra tool.
Yeah.
Quark would figure out how to use it for monetary gain.
Absolutely.
Who else?
O'Brien.
O'Brien.
I feel like O'Brien would not be on board. I feel like O'Brien's just tired and wants to sleep.
Yeah, I mean, O'Brien would go like, great, now they're gonna ask me to morph into small creatures to get inside and fix the air ducts. Like,
yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
My deeply silly question that I wrote in my notes at 11 p.m. last night is, what birds would DS9 crew morph into?
Ooh.
If they had a cold open.
A cold open, we are soaring
poachers.
on the thermal wings
Yeah.
and trying to steal guns from poachers. Ooh.
They don't necessarily have to be the animals, the birds, the Animorphs.
Yeah. Now we're going to do a really fun examination of how many birds I can think of. Because
Brennan Lee Mulligan.
Exactly. I'm going to have my Brennan Lee Mulligan moment and think of how many birds I possibly can. Because I know lots of birds, but now they're all leaving my mind.
Oh, you do know lots of birds.
I think so, but they're sure not present in my mind at the moment, but I know they're there. Honestly, one of the first comparisons coming to my mind is that I think Odo would appreciate the utility and logistical power of vultures, which are, extremely efficient and well-designed birds, and their bad rep in the mindset of humans connecting them with death does nothing to change the fact that they're, really helpful and useful in nature and really, really effective. Mm-hmm. And I feel like Odo would have an appreciation for that and would probably go for that for pragmatic reasons and also enjoy it because they're, very cool, powerful birds, but also utility based. Mm-hmm. And they can do a lot of stuff and they're very strong. I'm tempted. I feel like I'm drawn to both Kira and Bashir. I feel like might both gravitate towards something in the Falcon variant for different reasons, because I think Kira's would be because very fast, very efficient, and Bashir's would be because he thinks it's cool. And he would have a little bit of a Rachel moment of like, oh my god, wait, I don't know how to fly. Whereas
he would.
Whereas Kira, if they know in advance that they're all going out and this is a possibility, Kira would be like, Falcon's very fast, very good eyesight. It's just enhancing my battle abilities. And Bashir would be like, the Falcon is fun. I'll look awesome and badass. God.
We love him.
I love him so much. Oh boy. Early season 1 Bashir is so fun. Dax I can see as like a kingfisher. Gravitating towards kingfisher. I think a little bit different. Again, good at grabbing things, good at fishing, but also just uniquely good out of the air as well. I think Dax would not necessarily like forget to change back, but would be much more comfortable pushing close to the 2-hour time limit than everyone else.
I found it so funny in the beginning where Cassie was like, okay, so we should try to morph out after an hour and a half.
Well, that's never gonna last.
And I was like, dude,
what a sensible idea that I'm sure won't immediately become a problem later in this very book.
Of course not.
Never ever.
You can't, no.
They say things and I'm like, well, now I have bad foreshadowy feelings. I can see Dax the kingfisher. Cisco I am kind of drawn to bald eagle, and I'm struggling. I'm trying desperately to believe it is not because of his hairstyle. I swear that's not why it immediately came to my mind. But now I can't see it.
I see it.
Again, I think just like I think that actually might be, again, taking up a lot of space, being more noticeable, being not like intentionally a target, but that he would be kind of out there leading, as is his wont.
I could also see owl. You could make a case for owl.
Ooh, that's a bird. Yes, those exist. Owls exist. Thank you. I can definitely see owl for Cisco, actually. That makes a lot of sense. I feel like O'Brien would try so hard to not do this.
He'd be like a sparrow or something.
He would be like a starling or a dove that's just kind of hanging out very low where people aren't going to shoot at him, like on the first, like a story or two above the ground. He doesn't want to go crazy.
Quark is a magpie.
Yeah. Quark leaves and is never seen again. Quark goes and steals, or Quark is a seagull. Quark is a magpie or a seagull. Quark is just...
Seagull.
They're all off having another adventure riding the thermals over the forest, and Quark is stealing fries from people on the beach.
Episode title.
Fries from people...
Quark is stealing fries.
Yes, absolutely. And on that note, do you have any predictions for what's going to happen next in DS9?
Well, we had a nice little arc of individual episodes, and then the entrance of new and interesting people from the Gamma Quadrant, so I'm expecting that to continue, where we'll get focuses on like character studies on our crew, but also new people coming in from the Gamma Quadrant. Also, we were suspiciously light on Cardassian warlords, so they're gonna come back at some point.
True.
Don't know when. I think an episode is coming up where we're gonna keep going with the Bashir and Dex stuff.
Now, what makes you think that?
It has to end at some point. And I think, I say the Cardassian warlord stuff in jest, but also I think we will get more movement on the Cardassia-Bajor conflict in general. Delve deeper into whatever's happening on that political mess.
Yeah.
Yep. And more holograms.
I was going to add. This is unrelated to anything. I was going to ask what your opinion of the holosuite is, aka my favorite thing Star Trek has ever invented.
I think it is a very logical extension of what we would use that technology for.
It's... I love... I forgot this is how it first appears in DS9. I love holosuites because every time I saw them in Next Gen, I again don't think this is too much of a spoiler, it's honestly more of a Next Gen statement than DS9 statement, which is suites that can create environments and fake people and holograms is such a beautiful... The writers were like, we want to be able to write a whole bunch of crazy episodes. Let's just make sure this technology is available, just in case.
Maybe one episode a season where it's just like, and it was all in a holosuite.
Honestly? Yeah. We'll see.
Maybe it's like those Xena episodes where it's like, and we're gonna have a Wild West. You're nodding at me?
Don't even worry about it. You're going to really enjoy some of the trends that pop up from season to season of Star Trek, I think. Don't worry about it. It's going to be great.
And what are your predictions for Animorphs, which are maybe less great?
I'm predicting that they're going to start happy and then it's going to go bad every single time.
Oh yeah, I promised to read you my
Animorphs formula?
Animorphs formula bullet point.
Please.
Please continue with your predictions as I find it.
Yeah, absolutely. I predict that it's going to start happy and go downhill. No, I mean, I have to assume that if we're rotating at a relatively even pace, that we're going to one of the other three kids next. Again, I'm so excited to learn who it is, literally when I look at the book's cover for the first time, or read the first page. I'm really excited to see who it is, because any of the remainder would be super interesting. My instinct as a writer is that if we're going to get to Tobias, that will probably be last, just because of the fact that... But that's also very likely not true, and Tobias is the next one. It's going to be really funny when we start recording the next episode. So I have no idea. Again, I desperately want to get into Marco's brain and learn what in the world is going on there and have a great time with it. I think for the next one, I would guess they're probably going to continue trying to find and deal with the Yerk pool, which seems to be their most specific lead at this time. they honestly, they did make some progress. It would be uncharitable of me to say they basically had a net zero gain in things. That's not quite correct. They got lots of information and they didn't die, which again is our win condition for the Animorphs at all times.
And they destroyed a bug fighter.
And they destroyed a bug fighter.
Which, I mean, we didn't touch on the names, but...
Oh, yeah. But I think that they're going to continue trying to, utilize the information, continue trying to track down hotspots and sources of Yeerk technology and info. And I think, if I had to guess at other overarching plot lines for the next book or two, I think that there might start to be more of, things like school and work and hobbies interfering in their lives. I feel like we're due at some point pretty soon for a book that becomes, we've had aspects of it in all of the books so far, but a book where some major, relatively normal part of being a middle schooler and being in school and having friends and getting an education starts to aggressively conflict with whatever they're trying to do to save the world, and it becomes a big problem. It's been a problem the whole time, but I think we're probably due at some point for a plot where those two run right up against each other, and it's a huge mess.
Interesting.
And finally, what are your bullet points?
Yeah. If you made it through this is your reward. Rotating narrator. Cold open. Mission that goes wrong. Mission that goes really wrong, but they managed to eke out a tiny victory. Interspersed liberally with body and psychological horror.
That sounds so true just to these first two already. Oh my god. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. For next time, I'm going to try to come up with a DS9 formula, which I don't know if that's possible, but I think it'd be hilarious. All right.
Where can people find us?
Today they can find me sprinting through the forest, randomly stealing people's things.
They can find me inside a vacuum cleaner.
And also on Spotify and YouTube.
And in the stars.
And in the stars. Hey!
We did it! We did it!